There was a whole lot of engineering to make sure that your project is giving you the right outcome. Let me make sure I've not deviated away from all these things. I have not. So this process of being able to do this becomes very important. And everything I have just explained right now is at an individual level. When you want to transition this to an org level, I'll tell you how I currently do it. Because I interact a lot with my agent, with my LLMs, I get to research a lot of things that are of interest to me, including the strategy of my organization, including this kind of thinking, including this podcast, including my research on certain strategic areas that I find very important for my business, including my feedback for some of the areas that my team members are working on based on interactions from different clients. And ideally, how that will have usually worked will have been that before I'm able to disseminate the information that sits on my work. If you have a system, things like contact reports, you go to a meeting, you make sure, and I think Teams does this, Google Meet does this, they do a transcript for you, they do a summary, they do a next steps work. Prior to these AI things coming, you'll go to a meeting, you'll ask a person to do a contact report. That contact report gets added onto it, and then that is used as information for anyone who wants to understand what was discussed in the meeting. And the purpose of the meeting was me taking what was in my mind and my interactions and dumping them to the team. And using that meeting for every other person to do that so that we discuss within the meeting, update our history, and all of us almost work around that to figure out the information that Nyangena knows or Charles knows or Edith knows. This is how we've come down, worked together. We increasingly found ourselves that we will go to those meetings, discuss. I'll go with my understanding. I'll go to my ChatGPT. I'll play around with it and say, these are what were discussed. But remember, I'm not working on this project alone. Edith is going to touch upon it on their financial models. Zakaria is going to touch upon it in the technical details of the calculations. Charles is going to touch upon it. Are you seeing? Those are the different people who are going to touch upon that one project. But remember, my context from where I'm sitting has a lot of things around my research on certain aspects. When I'm using my individual AI, if I've structured it the right way and know how to work on context, it gives me very good outputs. Then I take that and give it to someone else in the team. But that someone else doesn't have all the context that I understand. So what was my fix for that? I told my Claude to do a summary of me across all these different verticals. So in biochar, this is what Nyangena does. And these are everything that Nyangena is thinking. These are the open questions Nyangena has. And that, I put it as a document, a markdown document, that I then send to my team members and tell them every morning when you're coming in, this is what I want you to be able to do. That's the plan that we are currently working on a project that we're calling Second Brain. But in our rudimentary thing was anytime we're working on a project, we will take that, I send it on email, everyone uploads it on their chat GPT, and it becomes a shared context all of us have on biochar. And anytime we collectively work on it, we send that feedback so that my AI has an idea of that Edith was thinking around it in this manner based off of her transcript. In today's discussion, it has been updated like this. So this is a new context. Are you seeing that manual way? And again, maybe there's a better way, but this is part of the journey that I have been going through on how you move this from an individual level to an org level. That's how we started around it. And the more I started reading around this ecosystem, I started realizing that you can actually automate some of these things. And then we started automating that, started coming with things. But then I gave GPT access to all my emails. Not GPT, Claude. I bought this thing. I have a Mac Mini sitting somewhere around this. I was told OpenClaw came around that time. We were told OpenClaw is this thing. It was a very monumental thing, and we went into it a lot more often. And then it started breaking, where I will use a lot of tokens. It will not remember me the right way. One day, it's almost like a glorified assistant who just thinks I am doing everything the right way. I started feeling like, there's something that hapa ni kama kuna natiko lose kwa akili ya hii kitu lakini sijui ni nini. And then the work becomes, how do you start fixing that? How you fix that? And then it started becoming that everyone in the organization started seeing the adoption of AI as a task, because it wasn't done the easier way. It was giving you outputs that were not the best. So you spent majority of your time correcting the work as opposed to just doing the work yourself. So you're seeing the challenges of it being able to move from individual level to org level. So your ability to do context management becomes very important for now if you're looking at it, and again, I will try to avoid talking about this. When we start building, we'll build together. The first problem for how we were looking at solving context was you do a big dump of data into one drive and then do RAG. Point your AI agent to your data lake and hope for the best that the AI will understand all these things. This is why I told you I tried using Claude on my email. I gave all my emails into the model. It analyzed it. This small problem started coming through. Rate limiting and costs. Naomba munisamee kidogo nihakikishe sijawakimbiza mbele ya class. You understand? I am not rushing the syllabus. We are still on track on the syllabus. No problem. So I can actually talk about this without feeling like I have gone very quickly. So you point it to the data lake, which was my email. It was able to extract, these are the, Nyangena sends this kind of emails. These are the people they talk to. They have a lot of relationships with this person in the conversation, and many other insights that you can get into it. It was able to give me an understanding of how my org works. So I was even able to know which projects work very slowly, which team members don't respond to players the right way, which projects were falling off of the cliff, what are some of the things that I usually do in successful clients in terms of the email disclosure. It was able to tell me who are the people I talk to a lot more times. It was able to identify dead projects and many other things, and we can get into all that. But you see now the problem was, and I'll give you one problem. If you interact a lot with a client back and forth, because you've not given the AI the structure to determine who a person is, it will start guessing that, because I'm talking to a person a lot more times and we have a lot more conversation, that person is an employee of the company. So when I asked it, who are my employees, it gave me a list of, 50 people. Half of them are clients that I just talk to a lot more often. And it was almost telling me that was a problem. And this is a problem of RAG, and there's an entire thing. You can look at Hugging Face. Documentation, there is, who are these other guys? LangChain. You read these two people, and even Claude, they have their blogs where they get into the technical details. You can look at other, Twitter is very big, for those of you, X, I'm an old guy. X is very big on this content, but again, if you use X in Kenya, unajua hizi mashida za huko kwetu. So, this was what I ended up doing. But then, big problems start coming through. The cost of even training my model on that, I used Haiku, an open source model. It charged me, and I went through back and forth with AI, and I think it charged me 0.05 cents, $0.05. So it's 5 cents to train my model, where it would have taken, I think, $15 if I had pointed. The model back then was Opus 4.5. It was, there's Opus, what are they usually called? There's Opus and the other one, Sonnet. It was actually using Sonnet, not Opus. There were certain numbers. I might be skewing this, but for it to have done the kind of analysis I wanted it to have done on my email, these were the costs that were going through. And then, because tokens is very limited, I want to explain that limiting, then I can tie all these things down. If you've been using these tools of late, you get to use it until a certain point, then you're told you've used all your tokens, you now have to wait 2-3 hours or pay extra. I'm going to just get into this much later, when now I am tying all this and showing you where I feel the opportunity is. Saying this is how you curate a bike to be able to move in mountains, in coastal regions, etc. It's aligned to this. Because when you're using Claude, etc., and you've not moved to the enterprise layer, this becomes a problem that you have to deal with, where you get rate limited. You're sitting here twiddling your fingers without knowing what you need to do, and then it does a certain time. So this concept of rate limiting as well is a constraint that attaches further value to how you manage context and efficiency, because how you load context, your structuring around it affects your token usage, and your token usage affects how efficiently you can use your model to extract as much as possible out of it. There used to be a time where prompt engineering was you understand. Autocorrect haiko hapa, so I don't know how to spell that. 2, now it's context engineering. That's become the new thing, and you'll hear things such as harnesses. In fact, I can give you a very funny story. When I was recording those first earlier versions of the model, these were not even discussions that ended up coming through. But since then, I stumbled upon this page. Engineers. Kama nimechoma imwe. Engineers on YouTube. If you're the people who appreciate a bit of technical depth where some of these concepts are explored with examples, there was a conference that was handled earlier this year, and now is when those videos are being created on AI engineers on YouTube, and you can look at it. And more so, look at the one done by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Singapore. Huyu mzee, yani ni jamaa mzee, lakini vitu anafanya yani through Raspberry Pi. Wacha nisiwasumbue. Go look at what this guy did. Go look at what he did. Listen to his videos. Look at what other guys are doing around this, and you get to see that this has actually become a thing. There's been a very clear shift from prompt engineering to context engineering. When OpenAI and Anthropic are starting the companies I was telling you that are going to the ground, is because they have realized that this here, how you handle context, is a real limitation for how you scale AI at an enterprise layer. And why is this important for me? Now let me try bring the harness back home. I had started explaining that OpenAI and the likes are doing a motorcycle. Can I remember how I drew it? Like that. And it's helping us move from point A to point B. But remember, I mentioned something like rate limiting. Well, imagine unapewa baiskeli. There's this meme in Kenya that comes out where unaambiwanga ukiwa mse wa boda, if you're those guys who are driving electric bikes, kuja ukiwa umecharge battery yako maze. Sikuja tuendeshe alafu tukwame katikati. What Claude does for us ni hiyo. We start moving, alafu unasikia nikao unasimamishwa katikati, unaambiwa wacha nikabadilishe battery, alafu tukuja tuendelee kazi. And then they move you till here, then wacha tusimamishe battery, tusonge. By the time unafika B, unasikia umeudhika, things are becoming very difficult, and the movement from point A to point B with the limiting becomes a very big problem. But what can you do? Because the provider of a motorcycle, Claude, in my case, this is what they've given me. And they're telling me, ukitaka kufika bei, pay me so that I can support you in all this. Or if you're a big enough of a client, like the likes of McKinsey, all these big organizations, then they can spend the time to figure out how they design this thing for you. And how do they do it? They call it the enterprise solution. Kuna kuanga na Pro, kuna kuanga na Max, kuna kuanga na Teams. I at least know this for Claude. This is on a per usage. You're given a pool of tokens, you utilize the way you want to go. Pro has limits, Max has limits, Teams have limits, but this gives you an ability to share context among different players. I will explain around that. But are you seeing the concept of rate limiting? Why is this important? If you're a business who has bought a Pro plan, nche, omo gusione, mimi, mtu wangu nimepewa hiyo kazi. That was Kisi. I have been given the chance to use Pro, but my team members keep getting rate limited. So the flow of work becomes a challenge. And if you use AI a lot more, you'll see you move from free version, you pay Max, you pay Pro, then you get to a point where you're choosing between Teams and Enterprise. And Teams you're given seats for your team members, but each team member has a cap. And any usage past the cap of a token is on a per usage basis. You're taxed on that. The other alternative is you're given an enterprise framework, you control how you use your tokens. So they give you an entire ecosystem, a pool of tokens that you can use. You structure your entire prompt engineering. And these are for organizations that are they know what they're doing around it and they use on an enterprise layer. The first problem becomes this. This is very expensive.